Hello, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Taylor Combaluzier, a mining analyst at Red Cloud Securities. Today's webinar features Orex Minerals, which is a junior mineral exploration company with a portfolio of large gold, silver, and copper exploration projects on prominent mineral trends in Mexico and Canada. In Mexico, it is advancing the Coneto project with JV partner Fresnillo and the Sandra project with JV partner Pan American Silver. And in Canada, it owns a 100% interest in the Jumping Josephine Gold Project. Orex is part of the Belcara Group, which is led by a strong roster of professionals that have a track record of identifying and advancing exploration projects. Today, I have the pleasure of having Ben Whiting, the President and Chief Executive Officer of Orex Minerals. The format of today's webinar will be comprised of two parts. In the first, Ben will provide an update on Orex Minerals, and then in the second part, we'll take your questions live. So please use the chat to submit any questions you have, and we'll get to them during the Q&A session. To start, we'll handle the disclosures, and then we'll get into the presentation. So for Orex Minerals, there may be some forward-looking statements made on this call. I would direct listeners to the cautionary note on page 2 of the Orex corporate presentation located on the company's website. For Red Cloud Securities, Inc., I would highlight that this webinar is for information purposes only and should not be considered a solicitation to purchase or sell securities or a recommendation to buy or sell securities. And we note that this call does not take into account the particular situation or needs of individual investors. Participants should rely on their own investigations and seek their own professional advice before investment. Please see our most recent research located on our website for Orex Minerals specific disclosures. So with that out of the way, I'll turn it over to Ben to update you on Orex Minerals and what you have to look forward to with the company.
Thank you very much, Taylor. And what I'd like to emphasize primarily are the projects in Mexico for Orex. But one of the things that is coming up, and this is the forward-looking statement, so I might as well make a forward-looking statement, is that we have a team in our group that are evaluating new projects. And the new projects will be part of a restructuring of Orex as well. We're working on the wording on a letter of intent for a new project right now and evaluating about 5 other projects that have been submitted to us. So it's an important part of the rejuvenation of any junior mining company. And as projects advance, then those are items to look forward to. So the forward-looking statement, I am indeed looking at those projects right now. You mentioned that we're part of the Belcara Group. The Belcara Group, and I've been involved and was one of the founders of the group. We're quite well known for the discovery of La Preciosa silver gold deposit in Durango, Mexico, and received the Explorer of the Year award for that discovery. The reason why that's pertinent to Orex today is that several of our projects are in the same geological belt as the La Preciosa project. So the geology and the regional knowledge are important for the advancement of projects. So the share structure and shareholders, as well as the 3 projects that Taylor mentioned, we have a 2% net smelter return on a gold project in northern Sweden. Now, that was a project, Barcelle Minerals Corporation has it, and it was a spin-out from Orex originally, and that's why there's still a 2% NSR as a valuable asset on a very good project in northern Sweden. That goes on top of the other 3 projects that were mentioned. This is where our current share position is. We have announced recently, I believe it went out this morning, that we are doing a share consolidation of the company on a 10-for-1 basis. So we will be under 20 million shares outstanding, and it will be a 10-for-1 from these numbers that you see here. Institutional investors are a major portion of what we have. Management also participates, and Fresnillo, the world's largest silver mining company, has an interest in the company as well. So you can see that institutional investors, including Ingalls & Snyder in New York, US Global in Texas, Sprott in Toronto, are all involved in our company. And I thank Taylor for getting involved with understanding the stories to help communicate it. So the 3 major projects I'll be looking at today is the Coneto project and Sandra project. We also have Jumping Josephine in British Columbia, and that's one that is available for possible optioning on the market. So in Durango, it's the heart of the Mexican silver trend, and it's sort of a heart-shaped state as well. It's on the Mesa Central, the high plateau in Mexico, and a lot of the major silver deposits are along this trend. You can see the town of Fresnillo to the southeast. That's where the major Fresnillo deposit is, and where Mag Silver has their Juanicipio project. Colorado is Pan American Silver's operations. You can see where Penasquito is just off of that major trend. La Preciosa, you can see north of the city of Durango. Coneto is marked on that, and Sandra, or Sandra Escobar, as the previous name was, is in the northwestern part of the state, not too far from Guanaceví, which is Endeavor Silver, and Endeavor has recently taken over La Pitarria project, which is to the east of Sandra. So this is a major trend for silver. Starting with Coneto, beautiful country. It's on the high plateaus, ranching country. That's the village. The property goes well beyond the hillside on the horizon and equal a distance behind me from where I'm taking this photograph, with multiple veins on the property. So it's a window of the lower volcanic succession, about 17 kilometers by 4 kilometers wide, surrounded by upper volcanic rhyolites, primarily andesites in the lower volcanic succession, and there are over 40 veins that have been documented on the property. This is what it looks like on surface. You can see a couple of veins in this part. That would be the Impulsora veins. So we're about 100 kilometers from the city of Durango, with Fresnillo as the major joint venture partner on a large land package. Originally, the conquistador Coronado, who worked with Cortez, came through this area. So veins of silver and gold have been known for a long time, but modern exploration methods and mining weren't applied originally, and it only took it down to about the water table. We've discovered that silver and gold goes much deeper on this property, and it does have a 43-101 resource estimate. Some of the drill holes on various veins: Impulsora, Loma Verde, La Bufa, Santo Niño, Durazno Alto. Those are all veins on the property, and you can see from some of the depths that if you're just taking it down to the water table, that'd be the top sort of 50 meters or 60 meters of a vein system. Some of these intercepts are 400 meters below surface. And the Santo Niño, you can see that down the drill hole be about 400 meters down. That's 300 meters vertically, and it's a good, strong vein with excellent grades. Gives you a sense for that it is gold and silver, and about half and half by value on the project. We've done metallurgical testing on the zones that have resources. 5 of these zones average over 93% gold, the highest at 98.5% recovery of the gold, so it's easy to get out of the system. One structure has slightly different metallurgy. We take a look at how that works. So that would be the Promontorio zone. And you can see that it's about 65% recovery on that. And the silver recovers up into the 80% on a lot of these structures as well. So it's got excellent traditional methodologies, metallurgical recoveries. So 106 drill holes for 38,000 meters of drilling on 12 of the targets. 6 of them had enough drilling to do the resource estimate. This is what the material looks like. It's in the oxidized zone. You would get gold and silver. You can see the bottom sample there is 6.34 grams of gold and 142 grams of silver. This would be from the Loma Verde structure. Deeper down, you do get the sulfide mineralization, and you get the introduction of base metals, which are not in the resource yet. If we continue with these structures, we would expect base metals to be in the bottom of most of these vein systems. Here you've got clearly evident boiling textures. The geologists will recognize those as being the boiling point in an epithermal system. You've got galena, sphalerite, argentite, chalcopyrite. These are typical minerals that you find in this system. Very, very nice textures. The 6 zones on the property that have been tested so far for resource: Impulsora, Promontorio, Descubridora, Loma Verde, La Bufa, and Santo Nino. They follow this northwesterly trend. Loma Verde is more of a north-south type structure, and it does not include the historic mining area, which has La Palma, Sauce, Tajos. Those veins are areas that have not been evaluated to go into a new resource area yet. So the first resource came out in late 2021. You can see by gold equivalent, if you think of it in terms of gold, 538,000 ounces of gold equivalent, so past the 500,000. If you think of it in terms of silver equivalents, we've got about 40 million ounces of silver equivalent on the property so far. Moving north to the Balearis silver deposit, which was one of our discoveries, I point out on this hillside, there's a little green dot in the middle. That's the drill rig on the property, the tarp of the drill rig. And we very much care about the environment. So when we go into an area like this, we maintain as small an environmental footprint as possible. We do ATV skidder roads and then reclaim them to get the rig moved around the property. So this is a 60-40 joint venture with Pan American Silver north of Tepehuanes on a large land package. So multiple vein systems on this as well, but also disseminated mineralization. In the southeast is where the Balearis block is, and that's where the current resource is. As you move towards the northwest, there's a mineralogical change that is showing a temperature increase in that direction. And so that temperature increase may move into the sulfide zones from manganese oxides and hydroxides. So in the Balearis deposit itself, here are some examples of drill holes. You're right at surface. It's sitting there with averaging over 20 meters thick, this horizon. But the very first discovery hole was late in 2015, released in 2016, and it was 61 meters of 359 grams of silver per ton, right at surface. So that deposit is quite an interesting style of deposit as well. The resource estimate on that is 33.3 million ounces of silver. So very little of anything else in it. It is silver. As you move to other parts of the property, you do get gold and silver and copper and lead and zinc. So there are zonations on the property. This is what Sandra's Balearis deposit looks like, a flat horizon with a very low stripping ratio. Those are a couple of cross sections. The samples of Sandra show that it is a manganese oxide and hydroxide here, and there are, I have to make a disclaimer, is that there are some metallurgical issues, that it's refractory material, and that's why I think that going for the sulfides as potential mixing material would be advantageous. This is difficult material to work with the conventional metallurgical testing. But it is an interesting style and shows that the system is very rich in silver. Some of it looks like concrete, and yet you get 254 grams of silver per ton out of that crystallithic tooth in the upper left corner there. So Sandra Gold Project, if you look towards the north where the pickup truck is on top of the Balearis, but there's the red hill in the distance, And the red hill is part of showing that there is a change in mineralogy as you're moving towards the north and you get more pyrite in the system, which gives the oxidation and the reddish color. So there is a small artisanal operation that is independent up in that direction, and that's called the San Francisco Silver Lead Zinc operation, and they do direct ship material to the smelter in Torreon. So they put it in the shiny bits into buckets and they send it to Torreon. Good example that throughout the mining camp there are changes in mineralogy that are being studied. Okay. So Jumping Josephine, the last one we mentioned, is up for option. And in Jumping Josephine, we have a small gold deposit in the Kootenays. It's not too far from Teck's smelter operation Trail, BC, easily accessible. It would be one that I think would make sense to put into a package with a variety of other properties that are in that area, because many deposits are relatively small, but together there may be the synergies required. So that is an available property for optioning. So the joint ventures where we own a percentage of them, and the ones like Jumping Josephine where we have all of it, shows that Orex's mineral resources by project, we have 36 million ounces of silver equivalent in indicated and inferred resources in the various projects as it currently stands, all with 43-101 reports on them. So community is very important, and we've been doing this kind of work for quite a long time. ESG has become a popular buzzword for environmental, social, and governance efforts, but we've been doing those for decades. On the left, you can see we're planting trees in the schoolyards and engaging with the local school children so that they take an ownership of those trees and they have a sense of belonging, and they'll be taking care of those trees in the schoolyards of the villages around our projects. On the right-hand side, it's building of a dam, the presas, for the ranchers so that they can capture water during the rainy season and be able to support some of their cattle on the property that's in this location. And so that's another thing that we do with the local communities. So current activity, we've got the metallurgical testing and mineral resource estimate on Coneto. SRK recommended a $6.4 million program. As we speak, there's a hyperspectral imaging alteration study that's underway, and that was one of the recent news releases that went out. So that's gone. Is Coneto the right fit for a major company like Fresnillo? That's another question, because we may be looking at restructuring that project based on discussions with Fresnillo. Sandra, we did a phase 1 drilling for the Pan American side of it in 2022. We're doing scientific testing and planning right now on the Sandra project to see which direction it's going. There are more social environmental programs carried on that are part of our engagement, including a bombero. It's a truck for the firefighters on the Sandra project. And what I'm most excited about right now are the acquisitions possibilities, the opportunities that are available in Canada and in Mexico for the property submissions. So our team is evaluating the new property submissions as we speak. So currently 3 projects, 2 strong mining jurisdictions, an NSR that may be monetized as well within the company, good mining country to be working in, unlocking value, and we've got a team that we see that there is more to be discovered. I thank you very much, and we'll open it up for questions.
Great, thanks a lot, Ben. Excellent presentation. So now we will turn to the Q&A portion of the webinar, and just a reminder to everybody on the line that you can type your questions into the chat box at any time. So with that said, we do have one just on the most recent news on the share consolidation. Essentially just wondering kind of what your thought process is with that, and what benefits that can bring, and I guess, kind of, just discuss that a little bit.
There is a perception, and it varies depending upon where you are in the world. Australia will often have 1 billion shares issued out, and they're trading at 1/4 cent each. So in their junior sphere, it's all about your market cap. It's not about the number of shares that are issued or the individual share price. In Canada and in the United States, it often people will look at, they say, well, there are lots of shares that are outstanding there. And they don't look at the market cap so much. But because the junior market has been trading low over this past season, it's a time of opportunity. But to recognize that we were approaching the 200 million shares issued. We were at, I think, about 195 million shares before this consolidation. This consolidation will kick in, I believe it's Wednesday morning. And it's a 10-for-1 straight up. Market cap doesn't change. The percentage of the company that an individual owns doesn't change. It just means that instead of having a 2.5 cent share, it'll be a 25 cent share, and the number of shares will drop. So it'll make it advantageous if we're looking at some new shareholders coming in. And that's the sole reason. It's a structural change. That's all.
Yeah, and that'll kind of, I think, to the person's question, come into play over the next 6 months to 2 years. You know, setting you up for that and bringing in new investors is kind of the idea, right?
That's right.
Yeah, perfect. So just turning to Coneto, you mentioned the hyperspectral study going on there now. Maybe just explain that for the viewers a little bit, and just kind of what understanding you're hoping to get from that, and how that'll help you better evaluate and help Fresnillo kind of evaluate the prospects of that project.
Yes, it's two-pronged. What it is beyond the visual wavelengths. If you go into infrared, shortwave infrared studies of rocks, you can find that you can identify certain minerals that are related to temperature. And so temperature is where were the hot spots for the hydrothermal fluids that brought the metal into the system. And that's the key, is how these systems, it's referred to as a low to intermediate sulfidation system, but it's a hydrothermal system. It's a lot like porphyries or hydrothermal systems. So you look at temperature zonations, and where the upwelling feeders are, you often get the most opportunity for deposition. So where the boiling was happening, you get the dilationary zones that precipitate the minerals. When boiling, gaseous phases do not carry minerals as well as the water phases. So that's why boiling in a system is a significant stage, because it's a place where the metals drop out and precipitate onto the walls of the cracks. And so where are those best locations? Sometimes you can do it both. The two prongs are on drill core. So you do core scanning of the intervals that we do have, because we have 106 drill holes now. And you can also do it on your surface alteration in a dry environment. And so you fly a hyperspectral imagery to work out where the hot spots are. So that's effectively what we're doing. And it adds to the geological understanding of the project.
Right. Perfect. Okay, and then let's in terms of Sandra, right before the summers kicked off, you'd had announced the securing surface access as well as core storage facilities. I guess, do you have kind of all the access that you need now there, and for the work that's ongoing?
We have everything that we need for that project. I am thinking about the project, how it fits within Pan American's needs as well. And Pan American, you may recall last year, they bought Yamana Gold Corporation. So Pan American and Agnico Eagle, another company that we've done business with, together bought Yamana Gold. The Canadian assets of Yamana Gold went with Agnico Eagle. the Latin American assets with Yamana Gold went with Pan American Silver. So Pan American is under a review phase of absorbing all of the exploration projects that they have in Argentina and Chile and Peru and Brazil and Mexico that were part of the portfolio for Yamana. Where does Sandra fit in Pan American's plans is something that's still not solidly understood at this stage, because they're still in their evaluation. Because of that, I want to bring another project into Orex. And so that it's not just on the timing of your major partners, but something that we can work on where we have 100% of the project and it's at our timing.
Right. And then I guess with that, in terms of, you talked about acquisitions a bit, do you have a preference for jurisdiction or jurisdictions that you're mainly interested in?
There are preferences for Canadian jurisdictions. Certainly there are some excellent ones. We are looking at some properties in Canada. We've had some properties even in the Golden Triangle of British Columbia. Those would be available for potential flow-through share money if we were doing that kind of a project. International projects are not covered by flow-through share private placements. But in Mexico, we have a lot of knowledge there. We have a lot of contacts that are there. And we have an office in Durango City. And so our staff there are aware of projects as they come available, and compiling some of the privately held land into a single project is really how we got Coneto in the first place. That was one of the things. We brought in 4 different landholders and negotiated to combine a project that a major would want to get involved in. And so that's something that we are looking at right now, and something that I'm writing the wording for a potential letter of intent, fingers crossed, a forward-looking statement that we will have another project in the silver trend of Mexico.
Right. Okay. And then, I guess with that, we were chatting a little bit about Mexico as a jurisdiction with the upcoming election right before the webinar. Maybe just talk about what's going on the ground right now. How does the new mining regime kind of impact things in terms of public bidding for awarding new licenses as opposed to the first application basis earlier?
Yes. For the past couple of years, under the jurisdiction of Andrés Manuel López Obrador, the current president of Mexico in the Morena party, the new staking of mineral concessions was frozen. So nobody got any new concessions. If you had the mineral trend on your property, got to the edge of your boundary, and the land was open adjacent to it, you still couldn't stake it. So that's something that I could see changing in the next little while. But there were some announcements last spring about changes to various legislation in Mexico and various ways of mining companies to operate there. I think those changes, they haven't been implemented, many of them, and the regulations haven't been set out. So there is a certain amount of uncertainty. However, there is a change going to be happening because there will be a federal election coming up and there are term limits. So both of the major candidates have talked about making it more compatible with sort of international operations, but benefiting the local communities is an important part of it. And so if we have these community engagements in place, then we're viewed more favorably. If you have a project that already has mineral concessions, then it's an easier one to move forward. And so I'm optimistic that some of the confusion or some of the comments that have been made last spring about mining in Mexico will be ameliorated over the next year.
Right. Yeah. So essentially, it's kind of that race between implementing things and the running the clock out in terms of that election coming up on some fronts. It sounds like for implementing some of those regulations.
Well, even if the implementations are there, one of the things was the sale of a mineral property in Mexico was supposed to be approved by a government agency that doesn't actually exist yet. Doesn't have the staff to exist. It doesn't have the operational wherewithal to make those decisions. So many of the companies applied for an amparo on their properties. And the amparo means we want to be considered under the old regulations until the new regulations actually operate.
Right.
And so we have an amparo filed on all of our properties. So that was an important step. The lawyers were very busy, and they're the only ones that were happy at that time was the lawyers when there were changes like that. But we do have the amparo documentation filed for every mineral concession within the company that we have in Mexico.
Right. Okay. And then talking still with kind of acquisitions and such, just kind of high level, you've been out there looking at the space, are projects coming available right now? Are people looking to do deals? Like, what does the kind of M&A space look like right now?
The M&A space is strong. There are deals to be had. You may recall that I have a past involvement in the Golden Triangle of British Columbia. I was Vice President Exploration and a director of companies up in that area. I'm still a director of Mountain Boy Minerals, which became MTB Metals, and they have lots of projects that are up in that area. So my knowledge in what's happening up there is strong, and I've got good relationships up there. You may know that some of the areas up in the Golden Triangle have the biggest undeveloped silver, gold, copper deposits in the world. Like Seabridge has the KSM project. When they put that together with a series that's Kerr, sulfurettes, Mitchell, Iron Cap, several other porphyry deposits there, they put it together. Infrastructure has changed since they originally put it together. So power line corridors up Highway 37 have changed. So looking at the region, now the region has mines that are in production. It has Red Chris, it has the Pretium gold mine. And so there are changes to that region and the optimization of mining in the Golden Triangle. My involvement goes right back to the Kerr. I mentioned the KSM. I was the geologist who put the first drill hole into Kerr. Right? So I go back to 1985 of drilling on the Kerr Ridge and seeing those systems and seeing that eventually it was going to be a mine. But it's all a matter of timing, and timing is key in any of these operations.
Right. Yeah. So that's good to hear that there's deals to be had out there and such for the right opportunities. So excellent. Okay, perfect. I'll put out a last call for questions here to the audience. Maybe Ben, if you have any final words on Orex, why should investors buy the stock? Big catalyst coming up. Just reiterate kind of the key points and let people have a second if there's any last questions coming.
Well, one of your colleagues was asking a similar question before, and the answer that we came up with was buy low, sell high. I've heard that expression before. Right now, Orex is in a lower part of its market cycle, and I don't want to leave it there. And so this is an opportunity to get into Orex, and it's at a time when Orex will be changing some of its structure. And so to me, that is from an investor viewpoint, that's got to be a key part of a decision.
Perfect. Okay, I don't see any other questions that have come in, so I think we'll leave it there, and that's a good note to end on. So with that, I would like to thank Ben from Orex Minerals for taking the time to host this webinar today with Red Cloud Securities, and thank you to everybody on the line for tuning in with us.
I thank all of the people at Red Cloud, and I think you guys do a good job. Thank you.
Appreciate it.